3 races into 2026, and Ducati are already chasing something they don't understand. Aprilia leads everything: riders' standings, constructors, teams, the complete sweep, and the paddock had an explanation almost immediately. The tyres, different casing, better performance, simple and comfortable. A gap that could be understood and eventually closed. So why does a theory that explained everything suddenly explain nothing? And what does it mean when the people responsible for solving this problem are publicly telling you they don't understand it? This matters because of what the comfortable explanation was actually doing. It wasn't just a theory, it was a direction, a development brief, a set of decisions about where to point resources and how to frame the gap. And I don't think you can separate the tyre narrative from the response it generated. If Ducati believed it, then for weeks they were solving the wrong problem. In MotoGP, a development cycle is 4 to 6 weeks from problem to track. So if you spend that window pointed at the wrong answer, you don't just lose the time, you lose the opportunity. That is exactly the position the tyre theory put the whole paddock in. This is why the moment the theory collapsed matters as much as the theory itself. Let's have a look at what actually killed the tyre explanation, because the evidence is cleaner than most people are admitting. We know for a fact that COTA was the moment the theory broke. Same tyres as Brazil, same tyres as Thailand, and the same Aprilia dominance. Every variable the tyre theory relied on held constant, and the performance held with it. And here is the part that makes it worse. Michelin admitted they had always doubted the tyre explanation. The tyre supplier doubted it. The manufacturers doubted it. But the narrative held anyway. So when COTA confirmed what the evidence had been suggesting, the paddock didn't just lose a theory. It lost the time it spent believing one. And that is a fundamentally different kind of problem to have. If the explanation was wrong, then Ducati spent weeks fixing a problem that never existed. D'Aligna said it publicly. Aprilia is the reference. And Tardozzi put a number on it. Aprilia has gained 7 or 8 tenths. We've gained 1 or 2. We need to hurry up. That is not a vague admission of a gap. That is a precise measurement of how far the reference has moved. Because now they aren't just behind. They don't know what they're chasing anymore. But the story doesn't end there, because the real advantage is somewhere most people aren't looking. The conversations in the data rooms and the paddock are focused on the obvious metrics: aero, engine output, top speed. But I'd say the actual gain is happening in the places that don't scream at you from a timing screen: braking, control, stability. Aprilia brakes later, carries more corner speed, and exits cleaner than anything else on the grid. Fabio Di Giannantonio described it from inside the problem. The others can brake later, enter the corner under braking, and use the front to turn the bike, whereas we're much closer to the limit. And that combination doesn't produce a single number that makes the source obvious. It accumulates across 20 laps. And I don't think you can respond to an advantage you haven't precisely located. What do you do when the timing screen confirms you're losing, but can't tell you why? That is the situation Ducati finds themselves in, behind on a metric they understand, and behind on a mechanism they haven't fully identified. Let's be clear, those are not the same problem, and they do not have the same solution. We've seen teams misread performance gaps before, but this one is different, and the difference matters. Let's not forget that the specific qualities Aprilia has built, the braking behaviour, the balance, the confidence the RSGP gives a rider, are not things you change with a development part, and those qualities are baked deep into the concept. And more importantly, a concept-level advantage requires a concept-level answer, not an upgrade, not a new part, not a setup change. And I don't think anyone has explained how Ducati closes that gap mid-season without a fundamental rethink. But the most dangerous dimension of this situation isn't the gap itself. Jorge Martin barely tested the RSGP and was immediately competitive. The bike is calmer, more predictable, easier to attack with. Jorge Martin said it directly to Bagnaia after the COTA sprint. "You've lost something now. You guys have improved your braking loads. You're really strong. A rider who trusts the machine can commit fully to every corner of every lap. A rider still building that trust is managing risk, not attacking. That difference is the most underreported performance gap in MotoGP right now. And across 20 laps, it compounds into a gap that looks impossible to close from the outside. And, oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention, Marco Bezzecchi has led 121 consecutive race laps in 2026. Not won 121 laps, led them, without a rival finding a way past, without the kind of pressure that forces errors or erodes pace. That number is not a speed stat, it is a control stat. Then Marquez said, "We need to understand why." And Bagnaia said, "Aprilia is ahead, quite a way ahead. Those are the two best riders in the world, and neither of them has an explanation. How do you close a gap that the best riders on the grid can feel but cannot explain? I don't think you do it quickly, but I'd say those two quotes together are the clearest signal of how serious this situation actually is, because if they don't understand it, the engineers working from their feedback don't have the full picture either. There are two possible scenarios from here, and I think the distance between them is larger than Ducati's public position suggests. The first is that the correct diagnosis arrives quickly. Ducati's engineers identify the actual source of the advantage and find a development direction that closes it. I can see a version of that. Ducati's engineering depth is exceptional, and their development pace has been the fastest on the grid for years. I don't think this gap is permanent, but the answer does not arrive in the next few rounds, because structural problems require structural time. On the other hand, Ducati spends the next month fixing the wrong thing. Something replaces the tyre theory, a new surface explanation, a setup direction that feels credible enough to act on, and another development cycle points away from the real problem. But the season does not wait. The points gap grows while the engineering team works on the wrong brief, and by the time the correct diagnosis arrives, the championship window may already have closed. At the end of the day, the most dangerous outcome for a championship contender isn't falling behind. It's falling behind while believing you understand why, and fixing something that isn't the cause. The grid thought they understood it 3 races ago. They didn't understand anything close to the truth, and they were already acting on what they thought they knew. And that is the specific combination that loses championships. Not ignorance, acting on a confident misdiagnosis, weeks of development pointed at the wrong problem, and a championship gap that grows while the correct answer goes unfound. But every week that gap between what the paddock believes and what is actually true gets wider. The championship moves further in one direction. How many weeks can you afford to lose before that direction becomes permanent? At this stage of the season, you don't lose championships just by being slower. You lose them by misunderstanding why you're slower and spending races fixing the wrong thing while the correct answer stays out of reach. Let us know in the comments below. And once you do that, make sure to click on the video appearing on your screen right now.